So about 7 years ago when I started college, I was eating a totally different diet. I was eating a bunch of processed foods. I was always going out to eat. I was eating junk food from the convenience store, cafeteria food, a whole bunch of stuff that I wasn't normally used to. Normally at home, back in high school, I was cooked regular meals with lots of veggies and proteins and things like that, all home cooked meals. But when I got to college, I was just constantly eating mac and cheese and burritos and Chinese food, lots of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and lots of fake eggs. And so over that year, I started developing a lot of stomach problems, feeling sick all the time, and the drinking didn't help either. So my brother told me that he's got problems every time he eats dairy, and it's like lactose. So he was always taking these lactase pills when he was drinking milk, and he was like, well, why don't you try something like that, cutting out some of your milk and stuff. So I decided to cut out my milk, and I felt a lot better. And for this whole summer, I cut out most of my cheeses and milks. During those times I felt good, and when I added it back in, I got really gassy and bloated and I felt sick. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna cut this out for good. When I cut out the lactose for good, I was able to eat so much more food. I didn't get full instantly. I felt a little bit lighter in my stomach, and I felt pretty good. It wasn't until about a year after that I started feeling sick and heavy again. So I found out both my brothers and my sister, everyone on my father's side, had problems with lactose, so that made sense. I decided to cut out all the dairy, every single dairy out there, which is whey, casein, lactose of course, anything that came from milk, but there was something still missing. My brother told me that about this sticky protein that was very common, it's just called gluten, and so I decided to cutting out gluten for 2 months and see how I felt. I felt relatively better, my mind felt clearer, my joints didn't hurt as much, but the problem was I was still eating junk and processed foods. All my gluten-free foods were just foods that were replaced with breading, sugar breading. A lot of stuff I was eating was Udis, Rudies. When you look at the main ingredient of Udis, you look at where that main ingredient comes from, it's just tree bark, which is fibrous, which is okay for you, but it's all sugar. And it took me a while to figure that out. I was always well, maybe I'm just getting gluten from this. Maybe it was something else like that, and I was just not eating that right. I decided to go on a anti-yeast diet, which is a candida diet. No sugars, no starches, no grains. I know it sounds crazy, right? No funguses, no mushrooms. And I felt so much better. I was eating chicken 3 times a day. I was eating spinach, kale, arugula. I think that was my diet. There was no sugar, there was no vinegar. I was able to eat rutabaga, so I made a lot of rutabaga latkes, and I was able to eat coconut oil, so I ate a lot of coconut products. Then the doctor I was seeing said they were able to find SIBO in my gut, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which happens when the bacteria in your large intestine get brought up into your small intestines instead of staying in your large intestine. So all the processes that normally happen in your large intestines are starting to happen in your small intestines. So you get bloated, you start getting gassy, you start getting pains, you start breaking down foods in the wrong places, and you don't absorb things properly. And I was having that only on a minuscule scale. You're not supposed to have any bacteria in small intestines. Even with all these probiotics, they're supposed to go to your large intestines. That's why prebiotics are good for you, but not if you have SIBO. A lot of people have problems where the prebiotics are getting digested in the small intestines because the large intestines bacteria are in the small intestines, so the process started happening in the small intestines where the probiotics are supposed to start processing in the large intestines, which keeps for a healthy gut, but not when you have SIBO. So I had to cut all my probiotics that I was eating, and so I had to go on a low FODMAP diet. So I was put on Xifaxan, ribofaximin for 2 weeks on this low FODMAP diet, but nothing happened. I took the breath test again for the SIBO, and I still had these elevated levels of, in my small intestine, there were bacteria, which you're not supposed to have any bacteria. It's supposed to be totally alkaline. And then I was reading that there was nothing to the low FODMAP diet that would help SIBO. And so the problem there was inconclusive data that the low FODMAP diet actually did anything. So I decided to go off the low FODMAP diet, but this time it wasn't prescription antibiotics. I decided to go on antifungals and antibacterial herbs. I took FC-Cidal, Despouside, ADP, which is oregano oil, I think, along with allicin, which is found naturally in garlic, and allicin is very powerful. Over the course of 2 months, I went back on this FODMAP diet. I added in guar gum, which is supposed to promote the bacteria to come out of hiding, which is the problem when you eat a low FODMAP diet. The bacteria don't see any food that it should eat, like sugars and grains and things like that. So they go hide away into their biofilm. Then you do all these antibiotics and they don't die, and they just come back when you start eating those sugars again. So what you have to do is you have to be eating those sugars when you're doing the antibiotics to kill them. So they come out and they start eating, and they don't hide away in their biofilm, and you attack them while they're out. That was the problem I was having before. I was also getting a blood test done by Cyrex. It's one of their most comprehensive tests. And I've had blood tests for celiac before, which showed up negative. I've had colonoscopy colonoscopies and endoscopies to test biopsies and see if I have celiac or any kind of damage of inflammation that would happen from wheat. That was always negative. But then I got the Cyrex test, which is very, very accurate, and it tests multiple types of proteins found in gluten and wheat. They found out that I do have a sensitivity, not an allergy, a sensitivity to gluten, a sensitivity to 2 parts of wheat. So it's good for me to cut out wheat, and I've been doing this for the past 5 years. But what was not neat to find was that I've also have sensitivities to chicken, which I was eating a lot of, pork, turkey, I don't mind not eating turkey, lamb I've never had in my life. I've never tried lamb, so I guess I'm never going to try lamb. So I've cut those out. And also egg whites. So what do? Extract egg yolk and eat that? And every time I ate beef, grass-fed, organic, local steak, any kind of beef, I would always get gassy after I ate it, even with digestive enzymes. I was already cut out dairy. I cut out eggs. I cut out chicken, pork, lamb, and turkey, beef. And so what does that leave me? Pretty much nothing that comes from animals, except for fish. But here in Los Angeles, the fish quality is pretty poor. And if I do want to eat fish, it's got to be very low on the chain. I'm pretty much very, very mild vegan pescatarian, not a vegetarian pescatarian. A lot of vegetarian pescatarians still eat eggs and baked goods, dairy and milk or cheese or things like that. I don't eat any of that stuff. My doctors were really concerned that if I was going to eat like this, I'm going to lose weight. When I had mono back 4 years ago, I lost a lot of weight to where I was 120 pounds. And you could imagine at 5'9", 120 pounds, that's not the best weight you can be at. And I've slowly gained it back to like 128. And my doctors were really concerned. You can't go vegan and on this diet because I'm also on a no sugar, no processed foods, no sugars like that. My doctors were concerned you're going to lose weight. When you get sick, you're going to lose a ton of weight and you're going to get very sick. I was like, that's bullshit. I proved them wrong. And in 2 months, I gained 8 pounds. Now I'm at 138. That's pretty good for someone who's gone vegan, gaining 4 pounds a month in muscle. I've also been doing HIIT, high intensity strength training, and HIIT, high intensity interval training. Right now, I am eating a vegan diet, no sugars, very low grains, things like potatoes. So a problem with anyone is you don't want too much soy. You want as much testosterone that you can get, especially a guy at my age. A lot of foods when you go out, it's like, oh, we added soy or tofu to this. So I have to supplement beans, of course, red lentils, very light on your stomach. You don't eat a ton of them at one serving, you're gonna feel it. And a lot of pea protein, hemp protein, a nutty flavor. I eat a lot of seeds. As far as fats, I don't eat any animal fats, so I eat a lot of healthy fats. Potatoes, avocados, bananas, coconut oil. And now I feel so much better. I have so much more energy and my stomach is a lot better by going on these antifungals. A thing called adaptogens. I'll explain that in a different episode. If you've never cut out dairy, just to try it for a month and see how you feel, because you might think how you feel is the normal until you cut it out, how amazing you feel, and then be like, whoa, I could feel this way the whole time? Wow, that's easy. Guys, thanks for watching. If you want to see more, be sure to subscribe right here. There's going to be a box to click right there, or you can just subscribe down at the bottom. Thanks for watching and see you next episode.